Hi guys, hope you're all doing well. Welcome back to the third video of the entire series that I have created for Active Directory Federation service. And in the previous video, we have talked about some of the prerequisites that you should know before you go ahead and install ADFS for your lab or your production environment. And in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how you can install ADFS in a lab and how you can request an SSL certificate or how you can create a template on your internal CA itself. So if you guys learned something new from this particular video or from any video on our channel, please feel free to subscribe and we will keep on posting new content for you guys. So after spending around, let's say 20 minutes on this particular video, you'll get an idea about how you can request a SSL certificate from your internal certificate authority with the help of a template that we will be creating. I will also be telling you how to install ADFS service. And the last thing that we will do once we have completed the installation is we'll try to sign in to IDP initiated sign on page. This is actually a web page which is hosted by ADFS as a service which you can use to check whether the credentials are working with ADFS or not. So if I talk about the setup that I will be using in this particular demo, and that is I have a domain setup which is conceptswork.com. The first machine on which I have already installed Active Directory, the host name of that machine is also Active Directory. And I have used the same machine to install Active Directory certificate services role. That means from the same server, I will be creating a template that will be used by the machine on which we will be installing ADFS. What do I mean by this? That I will have a different machine and the host name of that machine is ADFS. Now from this machine, I'm going to request a SSL certificate that will be given to me by this internal CA. That means the same machine on which we have installed Active Directory certificate services role. And once I have the SSL certificate saved on my machine on which we will be installing ADFS, we will proceed with the installation. But since this is a lab demo, I have used a SSL cert that is issued by my internal certificate authority. That means this particular machine. For your production environment, I would suggest you to go for a wildcard certificate. That means if your domain is conceptswork.com, make sure you request a certificate, a wildcard certificate for your domain. Now, there are several reasons behind this, which I will be covering specifically when I will be talking about three different types of certificates used by ADFS. For this particular demo, just make sure that you get a wildcard certificate that will make things a lot easier for you. Now, once we have the SSL certificate, we will proceed with the installation of ADFS. Once the installation is completed, then what we will do is we will sign in to IDP initiated sign on page. Now for this, let me switch to my first machine where I have ADCS and Active Directory installed. So this is my machine where I have already installed Active Directory, and as you can see, it is also getting mentioned here certificate authority. That means I have already installed certificate authority and ADCS on the same machine. So if you see here, these two components or this component specifically, which is certificate authority, is already installed. Since this entire series is focused on ADFS, I'm not covering the key concepts of ADCS, but I'll try to create a specific series, a different series on ADCS as well as soon as possible. So since I have already installed ADCS on this particular machine, now what I'll do is I'll go to Tools and I'll go to Certificate Authority. Now from here, I will be creating a template that I will be requesting from my ADFS machine. So for that, what I will be doing, I will be right clicking on certificate template and I'll click on manage. Now I'll go to this option which you see here, which is computer. And now I'll click on duplicate template. The first tab that you see here, don't make any changes. In the second tab, what you can do, you can actually type the name of the certificate. So I'm going to use this SSL certificate for my ADFS and my domain is concepts work. So what I'll do is I'll just name it as ADFS-concepts work. This is my template name. I'll select this option of publish certificate in Active Directory. If you want, you can also select this option, or if you don't want, you can ignore this. In the request handling tab, I'm going to select the option which says allow private key to be exported. I'm not going to make any changes in this cryptography tab as well as key attestations. Now I'll go to suspended templates, no changes. In extensions, no changes. But this is a very important change that I'm going to do now. And that is, I'm actually going to request this SSL certificate from a different machine and for the computer object. So what I'll do is I'll add my machine here and give the privilege to enroll for a certificate. So the machine from which I will be requesting the certificate is this ADFS machine. So now I'll go back to my certificate template properties and I'll just search for this machine and I'll select this one. That's it. It is getting listed now and I'll click on OK. Now from the permission tab, what I will be giving is enroll and auto enroll. If you want, you can allow full control as well. That is not going to make any difference if you are setting up a lab, but for production environment, you can actually remove full control or you can remove write. I would not recommend you to remove write, but it all depends upon you. Now the last tab which is remaining and that is subject name. Here you can select common name and that's it. Make sure that this DNS option is selected. In the server, don't make any changes, and in the issuance requirement also don't make any changes. Now see, there could be n number of ways of creating a certificate template. I'm just showing you the easiest one. The recommendation is for your production environment, always get a public certificate and that too with the wildcard entry. Now that's all done for the certificate template configuration. I'll click on OK, and as you can see, my new certificate template is getting listed here, which is ADFS-concepts work. I'll close this and I'll again go back to my certificate authority console. And now I'll right click on here and I'll click on new and I will click on certificate template to issue. Now, as you can see, my certificate template, which I have just created, is getting listed here. So I'll click on OK. And now this template can be requested by the machine on which we will be configuring ADFS. So for that, what I will be doing now is I will be switching back to the machine on which I will be installing ADFS. So this is the other machine and the host name of this machine is ADFS. The host name of the previous machine was Active Directory where we have installed AD and ADCS. Now, in order to request the certificate, I will just open the certificate console of this particular machine and then we will request the certificate from internal CA. Make sure on this particular option you select computer account, then click on next, finish. Okay, that's all you have to do. Now go to certificates, go to personal, right click, all task, request new certificate. I'll click on next next. And as you can see, I'm getting the option of ADFS concepts work. I'll select this and I'll click on enroll. Perfect. My certificate is enrolled. That means this machine has a certificate now that's been issued to adfs.conceptswork.com. That's all you need to request a SSL cert from your internal CA. I've said this multiple times and I'm repeating this again that this is something which you can do for all the testing that you want to do in your development or in your test environment, but for production environment, make sure you have a public certificate. So now, since we have a SSL certificate on this particular machine, we'll proceed with the installation of ADFS service. For that, I'll click on Manage and I'll click on Add Roles and Features. Now I'll click on Next, Next. Again, this just show you a simple overview about the name of your machine and the IPs. So here also you can click on Next. Now from here, I'm going to select the option of Active Directory Federation Service. Now this is a domain joined machine. Make sure you install this on a domain joined machine always. I'll click on Next. No options to be selected here. Click on Next. Now this console or this set of information that you see here, this is because this server is 2016. In 2012 R2, you might not get this console. So this is the basic difference. And now there's no option which you can customize here. So again, you can click on next. If you want, you can select this option, but for ADFS, it's actually not required. So I'm not selecting this option. Now, the moment I will click on install, once the ADFS service is installed on this particular server, on this particular page itself, I will get the option of to configure ADFS service. So I have clicked on install. The installation will take some time. And in the meanwhile, since this is the default set of options that we have selected, and we will proceed with the default options itself. So for this demo, Windows internal database will be installed and that will be used by our ADFS service. So as I said before, once the ADFS service will get completely installed, as you can see, now I'm getting the option of configure the federation service on this particular server. Now I'll click on this option to proceed with the configuration. And I will brief you now about every option that we are getting on each and every step. So as you can see, it says that welcome to Active Directory Federation Service Configuration Wizard. Before you begin configuration, you must have an Active Directory Domain Administrator account and a publicly trusted SSL certificate for server authentication. Now, this is the reason why I'm saying that if you're going for the installation, make sure you have a public certificate. Here it is mentioned that you can use a domain admin account, but in the previous video, I have specifically told you that if you have enterprise admin, that will add a benefit. And if you are a huge enterprise which has multiple forests and multiple domains, trust me, enterprise admin is the best option. Now, the second section says that create the first federation server in the federation server farm. I've also told this that what exactly farm is, that the database between all the nodes of the ADFS are actually shared and replicated. Now, since this is the first server of our farm, we will be proceeding with the first option itself. Now, if this would have been a second ADFS server, I might have selected this option which says add a federation server to a federation server farm. Since this is the first one, I'll select the first option and I'll click on next. Now, the user with which I'm currently logged in, that's actually an enterprise admin, so I'm not going to make any change here. But if you are logged in with a remote desktop user or a normal user which doesn't have a privilege, then you can click on change and give the username and password of the account, which is enterprise admin. Now I'll click on next, and in the next window, I will be getting some set of properties, and those are related to the certificate, which is the most important part. Now, see, on this machine, if I go to my personal store, I have a certificate which I have just requested, and the thumbprint of this particular certificate ends up with 8365. Now I'll go back to my setup and I'll select my certificate. To verify, you can actually view the certificate from here and go to the thumbprint. And as you can see, 8365, 8365. So that means what? When you will request a certificate from your internal CA, that will get saved in the personal store and that will be shown in your setup by default. So all you have to do is you have to come back here, type a Federation Service display name and click on next. Now there is one more very important option, and that is that since this certificate which we have requested, it is actually issued to adfs.conceptswork.com. That means my machine, this particular machine, the host name of this machine is ADFS and the domain is conceptswork.com. That's the only reason why you're getting Federation service name as adfs.conceptswork.com. In case if my machine had a host name ABC, then this would have been abc.conceptswork.com. Now I'm going to type a Federation service display name and let's name it as Concepts Work ADFS. That's it. I'll click on next. And now it is asking you to give details about the service account. Now, ADFS uses a service account and a specific SPN is also registered with that particular service account. Now, in this case, I'm not going to use GSMA. If you have this configuration in your current production environment, you can use that. If you want to check this for your lab environment as well, make sure you have a GMSA account which you can configure. But for this demo, I will be using a normal user account. I'm not going to use GMSA. So for that, what I'll do is I'll go back to my AD and I will create one account quickly that we can use with the ADFS setup. So for that, I'm switching back to my machine where I have installed AD and I'll go to users and I'll just create an user object which I will name as service-ADFS. Service-ADFS. Next, some random password, and that's all. Now, the user account is created, which is service-ADFS. I'll go back to my machine where I'm installing ADFS, and here I will click on select, and now I will type my user account name. And as you can see, the same account will start getting listed here. I'll click on OK. Perfect. It's asking me for password. I'll type my password and then I'll click on next. Now, as you can see, and this is the option which actually refers to the database. So if you go by the default setup, as I've explained in the previous video, a database will be installed, which is a Windows internal database. You don't have to do anything. This is a part of setup which will be done for you by default. But if you have a SQL database, you can actually specify the instance on this console, and that particular instance will be used to save all the configuration of your ADFS. Now I'll click on next and it will give me a summary of all the options that we have selected, and it will also ask you to review that. If you want, you can install or you can copy the script which is created by default. So as you can see, install-adfs farm is the PowerShell command which will initiate installation of ADFS. The thumbprint is already copied for us. Federation service display name, which we have specified. Concepts work hyphen ADFS, then my federation service name, and the service account credential is also specified. I'll close this and I'll click on next. Now, when I will click on next, there will be certain prerequisite checks that will happen and that will let us know that whether we can proceed with the installation or not. So we have actually passed all the configuration which is required for ADFS installation. But there is one detail here which I would like to address, and that is that the certificate that I am using, since it is not a certificate or not a wildcard certificate, so there are different endpoints which will be used by ADFS for certificate auth. So the moment I will click on configure, I will get certain warnings which will be related to certificate auth as well as SPN. So if there will be any issue that ADFS setup might face in order to register the SPN of the user account that you have specified, you will also get one more warning here. So as you can see, what it shows here, initializing the SQL database. So don't get confused. With is something which is named service specific, but under the hood, it's always SQL which Microsoft uses or gives by default with all the services. The next thing that we see here is creating private store. Now starting Windows ADFS service. That means what? ADFS service is installed now and it is actually getting started. As you can see now, the third error that we are getting, an error occurred during an attempt to set the SPN of the specified service account. Don't worry about this if you are getting this error. I'll let you know how you can manually register the SPN for a user object when we will talk about single sign-on. So now ADFS service is installed and configured. What I'll do is I'll click on close. The last step for this demo is to actually go ahead and access the IDP initiated sign-on page and check whether we can sign in with one of my domain user account or not. But before that, I would like to show you a couple of things from the ADFS console itself. So this is how ADFS looks like in 2016. There is a different list in 2012 R2, and there are slight changes on this. We will cover every option that is getting listed here in the upcoming videos. For this for this demo, just understand this is how ADFS looks like. Now, as per our next step, what we have to do is we have to sign in into the IDP initiated sign on page. For that, the link ends up with the endpoint that will be used by browsers. Now, in this video, I would also like to show you some more details which are moreover related to endpoints, but I will be covering endpoints in details in the next video. But in order to check the list, what you can simply do is you can do get-adfs endpoint. This is the command that you have to do, and you can do select full URL pipe to clip. Now these are the all endpoints which ADFS hosts on which it can receive requests and get them processed. Now in order to access IDP initiated sign on page, what you have to do is you have to go to this link, which is your ADFS Federation Service name, ADFS Concepts work.com, and then your endpoint ADFS ls, and then you have to type IDP initiated sign on.aspx. Just copy this and go to a browser and try accessing this link. Right now, this link will not work, and there is a reason behind that, which I will tell you. Now, For some reason, it was not opened. I'll try to open it again. Okay. So as you can see, I'm getting an error now. Now, it says that the resource that you're trying to access is not available. Contact your administrator for more information. Now, this is the change which has been introduced in 2016, and that is that IDP initiated sign-on page is not enabled by default. So for that, what you can do is you can go back to your PowerShell and run this command, which we called get-adfs properties. And as you can see, it says enable IDP initiated sign-on page set to false. All we have to do is set -adfs properties and then go to this option of enable IDP initiated sign-on page $true. That's all you have to do. Get-adfs properties, enable IDP initiated sign-on page set to true. Now, if we go back to the browser and if we just refresh the page, as you can see now, I'm getting the option of you are not signed in, sign in to this site. Now, if I click on sign in, I'll get a prompt, and this prompt is called Windows Security Prompt. That means it's basically an authentication that will be done by AD. It it's AD always, but this is something which we call Windows. This is a part of Windows integrated authentication. Now we will be working on this very closely when we will talk about single sign-on. But for this demo, what I will show you is how the form-based authentication looks like. So basically, there are two ways of authentication. The first one is single sign-on, and the other one is form-based authentication. You can check all those methods here, and as right now you can see it is showing you form-based authentication, and it is also showing you Windows authentication. I'll click on edit and I'll remove this Windows authentication option. I'll click on apply and I'll click on OK. Now I will copy this link, or I'll just close the browser and I'll relaunch the browser. I'll go back to the same link of IDP initiated sign-on page, and now just observe the difference. Previously, we got the Windows security prompt, which is known as Windows authentication prompt. And now if I click on sign in, I'm getting a form-based authentication. So now if I enter my credential, I should be able to sign in. And that's it. I'm signed in to the ADFS. One more important thing which I can show you right now in this particular video is that, as you can see, it is getting listed here as concepts work-ADFS. This information is actually getting queried from your Federation Service display name, and which is this one. Now, if I configure this to some random ADFS, you will see this value get changed on my ADFS. If I'll refresh this, it's now getting listed as random ADFS. So guys, this was all about this particular video, wherein we have covered a lot of content in terms of installation of ADFS with the default set of methods, wherein Windows internal database is used for saving the ADFS configuration. We have also tested the sign-in from ADFS IDP initiated sign-on page. We have talked very short on endpoints. But in the next video, I'm going to give you a deep dive information about what is federation metadata, what information you can find inside federation metadata, how applications use federation metadata to send authentication methods or send authentication requests, and then we'll also talk about endpoints. So if you guys have learned something new from this particular video, please feel free to subscribe, or if you have any suggestion, feedback, or query, please feel free to reach me at learnconceptswork@gmail.com. Thank you so much, guys. Thanks for your time. Have a great day ahead. Bye bye.